Hi. In this video, I'm going to show what's changed in Flightplan Visualizer version 1.16. The two major things added in this version is the ability to download and install flight plans directly from Alpha India Group, and a lot of new filters have been added many places in the software. So the first part of the video, I will show how to download and install flight plans. In the second part, I'll show the new filters. And in the third part, I will show what else have changed in this version. In the flight plan menu, this menu item was in the bottom before, but I moved it up here. And this menu item opened this website from Alpha India Group, from where you can select the season. And then you can click and download a single file at a time. And for many of you, that have been the way to update your flight plans. Since I switched to Alpha India Group AI install some time ago, I have used its download feature to download the flight plans. But now in version 1.16, there is a new menu item called Download AIG Flight Plans. And when you click it, it will automatically select the latest season. In this case, at the time of recording this video, it's winter 2019-2020. And you are able to choose another season if you want to. I only go back to 2018, even though Alpha India Group have flight plans dating back a lot longer. And the reason for that is because of how they make the file names of the flight plans. And I need the flight plan names to be consistent, because as you can see in this status column, from the flight plan, I can extract the season, I can extract the year, and I can extract the revision or the version of the flight plan. But that's only possible if the flight plan have a consistent naming. And that's why it only goes back to 2018. This year and season it allows to go back to is in the settings file. And in theory, you can go in and change it. Here I have the settings file open in a text editor. And you can see here it says that season is 0, it means summer, and 2018. If I change this to 2015, for example, and save the file and restarted Flightplan Visualizer, it would allow you to download older flight plans. However, if you do so, you cannot trust what is shown here in the status column because it's not able to extract those information. And when you switch to another season, it will find out all the names of the flight plans available for that season and update this list view. And as you can see, it will automatically auto-check those flight plans that you either not have installed, like this one, the topmost, or for example, this one, it's available in a new season. And if I remember correctly, there is also one here that's available in a new revision. So currently I have either a version 1 or a version 2 installed, but now a version 3 is available. There can be many reasons why Alpha India Group releases a new revision. It can be bugs they have found in the flight plans they change. It can be because a new aircraft model becomes available, or it can be simply because they fixed a problem with a repaint or they add new repaints. And of course, it can be changes to the flight plan itself. So in case it's a new aircraft model or it's a repaint, then you don't need that new one in Flightplan Visualizer because it don't need the repaint of the model. But for any reason, I will download them. And to download them, you simply you can check and uncheck these check marks, but I would want to download all these. Here's the folder I want to download it to. And I simply hit the download button. And it will ask me where to download it. I accept this folder. It will remember the folder you used the last time. So if you always if you always download to the same folder, it's simply hitting OK. And it will download all the files, and you can see they appeared in this window. And here you get a status, a report. It informs me that 93 flight plans were downloaded, 0 were skipped, and there were 0 errors, and it tells me the time it took to download them. This is the time it takes is not only the download time, because what it does is it actually tries to open the zip file and count the number of files within the zip, and that's to verify the zip file is correct, that it did not get corrupted during the downloads. So I close this window. If I drag in my file explorer again and I delete a few of the files, if I again go into this window, choose the season, and I say downloads, and I select the folder, I get this message telling me that this folder contains 88 of these flight plans. Of these 93 flight plans, I already have 88 of them. And it asks if I want to override those I have. For that, I choose the Danish word for no. So this time, only 5 flight plans get downloaded, and it will skip those 88 I already have. So that's how you download the files. And once they're downloaded, you can, as usual, go into import and navigate to the folder for where you downloaded it. And then you can start importing them. However, there's no need to download and keep the files around. What you can do instead is going into this menu item. And for example, if I want to install this one, as the text tells me here, I can simply double click it. Then it will be downloaded to a temporary file. And I look if I have the airline. I look down here if the aircraft is detected correctly, and it is. And also I look if it will say that this aircraft is operated by another airline, in which case I would want to select it and change the operator. But in this case, everything is as it should be. So I simply click save. And now this one is installed. And that temporary file is automatic deleted, so there's no need to do anything else. You can simply rinse and repeat and go on to the next flight plan. This was a version that was not installed, but this one, it's a new season. So perhaps we have a summer 19 installed, or it can be a winter 18, 19. But I simply again double click. And I look again. The airline is correct. The aircraft have been correctly detected. And there's no operated by. But up here, this button called similar, that was not visible before. But it's visible now because it tells us we have a similar flight plan already. And we can see we have a summer 19 installed. Normally I grab this name, and that's because I need to add it to one of the files that is supplied with the software. I'll show you afterwards. But for you, you can write it down because you would need to remove this flight plan or disable it, because there's no need to both have a winter 19 and a summer 19 active at the same time. And again, everything is okay now, so I save it. And I can continue to the next flight plan. I skipped the first one, and there was a reason for that. It tells us it's not installed, and when I double click it, you see it did not find the airline. That's because this is a new airline. It's not added to the data file supplied with the software. So I need to add this airline. I will add this airline to the files bundled with this software. So when you get this version, and you will try to install this version if you want to, but there's no need to, it will be included in the installer. But if you were to install this flight plan yourself, the airline would be there. But as you can see in this, at this time, it's not available. And we can look down here again, see that the aircraft have been auto-detected correctly, and there's no operated by, but we need to address this issue because we need to put an airline. You have information here about the flight plan for which airline it is, but more important, for the two aircraft down here, you miss a carrier and an operator. So what you can do is you can add this as a user airline. I will drag this window a bit. I can see this information up here. I click add. I can see the carrier code is CSB, and the name is 21 Air. I can see the call sign is Cargo South. You cannot see which country it is, but I looked this one up in the internet before, and I know it's from the United States. And I click this one to refresh this information. If I knew the dates at which this airline started, I would fill out this information. But as of now, I have not tried to look it up, so I just skip it. And I can edit comments if I want to. But it's all like it need to be, so I hit save. And I return to this form. And here I need to hit save again. But before I do so, I want to tell you what happened in the previous version. When you save this one, it would simply return to this import form, and you had to use the airline search. You had to search for this new added airline, and you had to accept it. But here in this version, when you hit save, it assumes you want to use this one. So it asks, do you want to use this one? And I choose the Danish word for yes. And like before, when you choose an airline, it will ask if it should automatically fill out all aircraft with this airline as carrier and operator. So I hit yes. And everything is okay. I hit save. And it's installed. And now I can continue installing the rest. When you get this version, I will automatically have installed all of these flight plans and bundle them with the installer. But depending on when you install the software, there can have been new versions of flight plans released. So perhaps you will need to go in and install more. So we'll skip that for now. I will then go into the menu item, enable and disable flight plans. I have all my flight plans in a subfolder called commercial. However, when you install, when you import flight plans, they will always be installed into the root folder. So we will need to move them to that subfolder if you do the same as me. So I right click, select all, and I simply choose to move them to the right side, and default is if the same file exists over here, it will be overwritten. So I just click this button, and before I do so, I will highlight a new feature in this version. Down here I show how many files there is in the list view, and in the parentheses I write how many are selected. So here 3 of 3 is selected, and over here 0 of 738 none are selected. But I simply move them, and now there's 741. And as you remember from when we installed them, we had Air Albany in two versions. We had an old summer 19, and we have this new winter 1920 that we just installed. So this one I don't need. Many times I have an obsolete folder, and that's because I want to wait a bit before I delete them. But you can, if you want to, you can simply choose the another folder and move them to. But I in this case I move them to my obsolete, and I click to the left side. Then it will be added over here and removed over here. If you look here, commercial folder, this folder is enabled. It means all of the flight plans in this folder will be loaded when the software starts. If we go to the obsoletes folder, you will see that check mark is not set. It means that this file will not be loaded. So if I click close, it will reload the flight plans, find out which flight plan is active, and then load those. And you can see here Air Albany, only winter 1920 is active. We cannot see the other one. So that is what you should do when you import flight plans, to make sure you don't have both an old and a new version of the same flight plan. If we again go into the download and we choose, for example, summer, it will not be a surprise that that for some flight plans you will be told that this is an older version, because naturally we're looking now for flight plans from 2018 and 2019. A new version was installed either summer or winter. But also you will see here, for example, Agile Azure, it will tell us that this one is not installed. Telling us it's not installed is not the same as telling you should install it, because there could be a reason why this is not installed. And actually there is. If we click this button, it will go to the Alpha India Group forum and grab information from note they have regarding flight plans that are either defunct or flight plans that have changed their name. And in this example, you see Agile Azure down here, that it had been marked as a defunct airline. And in most cases, it's an airline that have been going through a bankruptcy, and they don't exist anymore. Some of you might want to have these old flight plans even though the airline does not exist anymore, and of course you are allowed to install it. If you want to install it, it's just like before. You double click it and look that everything is okay, and you hit save, and then it's installed. But many of you always only want to have the flight plan that are from current airlines. And to ensure that is the case, you would need to look in this defunct list to see if it's defunct before you install it. I don't know if you noticed when I click this window this one goes in the background. As a new feature in this version, you now have this checkbox topmost. When I click it, even though I click this window and this window is in focus, this one is shown on top, and it allows us to see what's visible in this window while we operate in this window. You can close manually, or if you close the form that opened this, I call it my result viewer, then this window will close automatically. The same list is available in here. We can open it from here. Another thing we can in here that we cannot do in the other window is opening this list. This list is a list I maintain manually and supply with the software. And that's why I grabbed the name from that file before. You see here I have marked Air Albany Summer 19 as an obsolete flight plan. And that's what allow you to, if I go to my obsolete folder, and I right click and say select all obsolete, it will select this one. It does not do it at this time because this file is not saved, so it was not available at the time I started this software. But otherwise, it will automatically select it. I can show it with this defunct folder. Here I have kept a copy of all the flight plans that have been marked as defunct. And if I right click and say choose all defunct, you can see they will automatically be selected. And that is thanks to this list that I maintain. At this time, I have not made version 1.16 ready for release. So as I start to import more flight plans will be added to this obsolete part of the list. So this is how you can easily download and install flight plans directly from within a Flightplan visualizer. I plan to keep adding new flight plans as I release new versions, simply adding those that have been released from AIG since I last released a version, and I will remove those that have been marked as defunct, and I will remove those that have become obsolete because there's new versions available. But for those of you who want to download and install these flight plans before you get a new version, this is how you do it. In this second part of the video, we're going to look at the new filters added. This filter was added in the previous version, and we already used it to search for Air Albany. But when I made this the last version, I already had an idea I would want to add it to the leg search. And as you see in the leg search window, we have a lot of new things compared to the previous version. We have the flight plan, airline, and aircraft filters up here. And they filter what is visible in these three list views. Also down here we have a flight number. The FP is short for flight plan. It's the flight number from the flight plan and the registration of the aircraft from the flight plan. Perhaps not as visible is this airport filter. It used to be an entry field where you could enter a comma separated list of airport ICAO codes. You can still do that, but also you can enter more complex filter texts. Down here, these combo boxes, you have more options now. It's the first NA means it's not active, but otherwise you have these 5 choices, and you have them in 4 variants. For example, I can choose that either of these airports selected up here, either of those two have to be either very simple, plausible, enhanced, or third party, or they both have, or only the departure airport have, or only the destination airport have. Likewise, for these that have to do with the size of the airport, the minimum length of the runway, or the minimum and maximum elevation of the airport. When it's like here, NA, it means it's not active, but I can say that I want this, for example, if I want to set a minimum size of both my departure and destination airport, I would choose both. Um, and I don't have to set both mean and max, but I can set mean. For example, I say I want both airport to be minimum set up as medium airports, but setting it to NA like here, it means it's not active. Making the form wider allowed me to add something that I have wanted to add for some time, and it's these two fields. Now you can set, like before, the flight time. So for example, I can say I only want flight times between 2 and 4 hours to avoid having to fly a long flight. But also now I can say that the flight have to either depart or arrive at a certain time. For example, if I want to fly a flight that arrives at some time in the night, I could say it will arrive between 10 o'clock in the evening and 4 o'clock in the morning. I realized the other day that for you guys from America, this might be a bit strange, but these things always have to be entered in a 24-hour format. And also I can choose if this departure or departure or arrival time should be configured as an UTC time or local time. For the arrival time, you have this check mark. Likewise, you have this check mark up here, calculated. It's because in the software, I calculate a time as I think how long the flight would take. It's not a problem with the flight plans from Alpha India Group, but I have seen other flight plans where the flight time are very unrealistic. And to correct that, you can choose to use a calculated time, and then you use the time I calculate in the software. The departure time will always be the same time as the one in the flight plan, but the arrival time can be different if it's calculated. In most cases, I would want to use it as it is here, so you use the flight time from the flight plans. Before performing a search, it's always a good idea to hit the reset button. And when you do that, it will reset to either the default, or if you have saved your own preferred reset configuration. If you want to make sure you reset to the factory default, like the tooltips tell us here, you have to hold Shift and then press it. The default reset will clear all the fields, and it will include all the aircraft types. But personally, I don't want these aircrafts included. So I would hit select none, and then I will save this reset. If I hit shift reset, I will get the factory reset like before where they are included. But now I have saved my own. When I hit reset, I will get this version where none are selected. So if I were to hit search now, I would get an error message telling me I need to include at least one aircraft. And typical, I want to include all of those I consider my favorites. So I can simply click this one. The reason I don't save this one as my default and use it is because it will remember which are my default at this time. For example, if I did not have these as my favorites, all the Airbuses, if I were to add them as favorites since, the next time I would go in here and reset, they will still not be part of it. However, when I hit this button, add favorites, it will go into the list you can configure here, where you choose which one are your favorites. So let's return to this window and look at the filters. As you can see, when you hover the mouse over these filter fields, you get this rather large tooltip. And this tooltip can be a bit hard to read, and it does not contain all the information. So instead of you having to flip through the manual, I made a special manual only for these filters. And this button will open the filter manual. It will open the filter manual on the first page. And on the first page, you will have link. Clicking these links will let you go to a specific part of the filter manual that will tell you the specifics of that filter. But the first many pages will tell you what is generic, what is how to use the filters overall. For example, here it tells you that if it detects the filter is not valid, the text will turn red. I suggest you keep it simple and don't add a lot of things to search for. If you can do it more simple, it will tell which wildcard to use. You can use an asterisk, or you can use a question mark. The percent can be used instead of the question mark. They work the same. The alpha is a placeholder for a letter A to C. And the hash mark is a placeholder for a digit between 0 and 9. And I tell you how the things are doing, and you can use equalizer operators and equality operators and things like that. But otherwise, we can jump to, in this case, the flight plan filter. Every filter have a default type. If you don't enter the type name, for example, name, the default filter will be used. In case of the flight plan, the default filter will be the name of the flight plan. You can specify you want to search filter by name, and it gives you some options. I will go into detail with this one afterwards, but also you can choose you want to search for offer, provider, year, season, a new combination of season and year, or the folder in which the flight plan is installed. So I suggest you read the first part of the filter manual to get an information about the basics of the filter. And then you can quickly, for example, if I want to use the aircraft type, I can open the filter manual. I can jump to the aircraft filter and I can see the specifics I can use with this filter. We looked at this filter in the last version when I released version 1.15, but there have been some changes in this version. For example, if I want to search for the author, I can use the full name, write author, or I can use the shortcut and say Johan, for example. So now I see all flight plans that have been made by Johan. In the last version, if you wanted to see both those made by Johan and, for example, Kai, you had to write the text 2 times, author, Kai. So now I see both those where Johan and those where Kai is the author. As a new feature in this one, we only have to write this name once, and then you use a slash and then the other name. So this is shorthand and have the same effect as what we wrote before, but it's much easier to write. So it's easy to search for. For example, if I want to search for all all flight plans that either had cargo or air in the name, I could write it like this: name equals cargo slash air. This one, it does not have cargo in its name, but it have air. And there will be other ones that don't have air but cargo in the name. If I want to only see those that have both cargo and air, there is a new feature. These two are odd. Those of you who have had any experience writing software, you will know the OR command. It simply asks if the name contains cargo or it contains air, it will be available in this list. However, if you only want to see those that have both names, they need to be ANDed. And the way you do is you add the ampersand. And the ampersand have to be between the name and the equality operator, in this case equal. What it does is it forces this to be ANDed, meaning we only want to see those flight plans that contain cargo and air in their name. I pressed arrow down, that's why that command disappeared. All of these have a most recent list. It remembers the last 20 things we searched for. For example, I can choose this one to see all flight plans that was from the year 18 and the season was summer. You can see they say all summer 18. Or I can choose to see all those that have Baltic in their name and so on. For example, if I don't want to see airlines with either east, west, north, or south in their name, we can do like this. But this is the wrong way, and I will tell you why. The way you write not equal is an exclamation mark and then the equal sign. But as you remember from before, these are odd. So I say I want to see all those flight plans that don't have east in their name, or don't have west in their name, or don't have north in their name, or don't have south in their name. In this case, it doesn't have any of them, so therefore it's on the list. But if we find, for example, WestJet, they don't. You say we don't want to see those that have east in their name, but we also say or those that have not east in their name. And WestJet don't have east in its name, so therefore it's actually still in the list. So here, to force these to be ANDed again, we add the ampersand between the name and the equality operator. And now WestJet will no longer be in the lists. So that's how you can now use the not equal and how you can use the newly added ampersands. If we look at this we had before, year and season are two different types, and two different types are always ANDed, meaning that the flight plans to be in this list, they both have to be from the year 18 and the season have to be summer. You have no way to specify that these two will be odd and it will give no meaning. You will never see all flight plans that are either from 18 or is from a summer. Um, so that's how you can use a flight plan filter. Um, One important thing to mention is these buttons down here, select all and select none. These have changed. For example, if I write west, or before I do that, as you can see, they are all selected. If I hit west and I say select none, you can see the check marks goes away. But if I clear the filter, you can see the check mark has only gone away from those that was visible. So if you want to select or deselect all, you either have to have a blank filter or you have to use the shift button. If I hit select all and I write west, if I know I forgot to hit select none before, when you hover the mouse, it tells you that pressing shift while you do so, it will deselect all of them, both those visible and those not visible. So I hit shift, I click the button, all will be deselected. And if I hit select all without shift, only these visible will be selected. So when I clear the filter, you see these are not selected. But if I go, everyone with west in the name are selected now. And I think that's typical how you want to do it. For example, if you want to filter by a certain airline, you would start by clearing the filter and then, for example, search for Scandinavian. I could either select all, or I could simply select that one I want. Let's reset the filter. Like before, the flight plan filter's default is to search in the flight plan name. The default of the airline filter is both to search in the ICAO code, the ATA code, and the name for what you enter. And the reason for this is simply to keep the filter as simple as possible. For example, I can rate CAN if I want to have Canadian airlines with Canada in the names. But also I could write BAW for British Airways. Or I know the IATA code for Scandinavian, it's SK. And you can easily search for the things you remember from the airline. But again, the tooltip will tell you what else you can search for. And also you have still the flight plan, the filter manual you can open. One thing you can search for is the country. Here I have the 3-letter ISO codes for countries. DNK for Denmark, NOR for Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, Faroe Islands, Greenland. And that's how you can select only airlines from these countries. If I hit shift and hit select none, I will deselect all, both those visible and those not visible. When I click select without pressing shift, I will only select those visible. So if I clear the filter now, I will only have selected those from these countries. You don't have to know these ISO codes for the countries. What you can do if you don't know them, you can go over here to the country dropdown. As a new feature in this country dropdown, I have added this ISO code for each country. So, for example, if you don't know, the one from Brazil is BAR. You can look it up here and then simply enter it over here. If I click the right place, that is BAR, and then you have Brazilian Airlines. The aircraft filter is also easy to use. As I showed in the video, don't overcomplicate things. Keep it as simply as you want, because you can filter many times. For example, if I hit none, if I want to add, for example, all my Airbuses and all my Boeings, I could start to type a filter where I say name equals and so on. But to keep it simple, now I have deselected all. I can write Airbus, hit select all, clear the filter, write Boeing, hit select all, and clear the filter. Now all my Boeings and all my Airbuses are selected. Or if I only want to, for example, 737, and I only want to select 600 to the max, I can do it like this instead and skip the rest. If I only want to select the Airbus Neos, I could start again to make a complicated filter, or I can simply just write Neo. And I could select all, I could simply click those two I want if I only want these two. So always keep these filters as simple as possible for your own sake. In most cases, there's no need for advanced filters, but sometimes there is. And with the aircraft, you can start to make it fairly complex. For example, one of the filter types you could search for is engine count. I can do like this, engine count equal to, and you will see all those that are registered with two engines. Most of these names I have overloaded, so there's many things you can write that would equal to engine count. And that's to keep it simple for you. If you only remember one of these different alternatives, everything will be okay. If you write it not correct, you will see it will get this red color to tell you there's something wrong. If we open the manual and scroll to the aircraft filter, you can see the engine count. You can write, as I did first, engine count. You can write END count, END CNT, and so on. And the shortest version is simply EC. And as you can see here, you can, because it's a numerical value, you can write it like this to have all aircraft that have 3 or more engines. So we take a copy of this text and we simply paste it in here. For example, the MD-11, it has 3 engines. Or the 747, it has 4 engines. And this is what we write, that engine count have to be greater than or equal to 3. We can also write the engine type, and the shortest version for that is ET, and then jet, for example. We have, if we remove this part, you can see more lines will appear, and that's because we have some props or turboprops also. But writing it like this, we reduce what is shown. We can also write usage equal freight. I prefer to write it as cargo, but freight is also okay. And I can say I only want aircraft of a certain size, so I write comma, and then EOW for empty operating weight greater than 400,000, and this is LBS in pounds. All these different commands are listed in the manual. I can write engine count equals 2 and engine type equals turboprop or just turbo. Then I see all my 2 engine turboprops. I can for example, FAV for equal either yes or true. I choose true. So these are my favorite 2 engine turboprops that I have registered as favorites. So there's many ways you can use these filter. As I said, it remembers the filter, it remembers the last 20 you have used, but they will only be added to this use list if you actually select something. It's not enough I select it, I need to keep this selection. And for example, if I click clear button now that last command I used will be active here. So in many cases, perhaps what you need to search for is something you searched for before. So instead of typing it, you can look here if what you need is among these last 20. As I said before, this gets it gets a bit nerdy what you can do in this. But always keep it as simple. For example, if I want to king air, I just write it here on ATR. So always keep the search simple if you can. Likewise, if we go to the airport filter, like in the previous version, if you know the ICAO code, you can simply type it, EKCH for Copenhagen. If I don't know it, like before, I can use this search and I find Copenhagen. If I want to add one more, as the tooltip tell, it goes beyond the screen, but what it says is shift click to append. So I hit shift and then I click. I search for Billund. I select this one and it will be added to the list. So this will work exactly as it did in the previous version. Only difference is beside of this being an entry field, it's now a combo box where it remembers. And like you see here, for example, we can search for country. In this case, there's 2 countries, both USA and Denmark. And as I said before, if you don't know these 3 letters ISO codes, you can look them up here. If it's only one country, if I want to say I want to see all flights that are outbound or inbound of USA, don't type it. There's no need to. You can simply choose the country here, United States of America. However, if it was like before, 2 countries, you cannot choose 2 countries with the country combo box. So you will have to type it up here. Likewise, region, I have added the 3-letter code here. And sub-region, also a 3-letter code. If you only want to, for example, search only flights from North America, don't start type anything, just choose the sub-region if it's only a single one. But let's say I want to choose all aircraft from the Nordic countries. I simply grab this one and I type it here. And I can say I want to see all flights from the Nordic countries going to the United States of America. Where is it? And I hit, before I hit search, I just want to point out I only include my personal favorite aircrafts. It performs the search. It tells us how many legs and how many routes. I click OK. And you can see now I have all the flights between America and the Nordic countries. So that's how you can use the filters for the airports. But again, keep it as simple as possible, because if you can pick it from, if you know the ICAO code of the airport you want, you can add it here, or you can write the choose the country from the drop down, but only use this if you want to. Let's have a look in the manual. I go to the top to quickly choose the airport filter. The default filter will only search in the ICAO code, and the reason for that is that was how it worked in the old version. You can specify you want to search ICAO code. The reason you might want to do is to do that is if you want to use the ampersand or the not equal operator. When you use the default filter, it will always OR the value. For example, if you write it like this is the ICAO code for Copenhagen, for in Norway, and from Stockholm in Sweden. If I write it like this, they will be odd. It will mean I will see all flights to either of these three airports. For example, if I don't want to see flights going into Copenhagen or Billund or Aalborg in Denmark, I can write it like this, where I say I want the ICAO code to not be either of these. You can search for the IATA code if you know that. You can say you want to search for the name. This is the Danish Copenhagen airport. It's called Kastrup. Gardermoen is the name of the airport in Oslo, Norway. And Arlanda is the name of the Stockholm airport in Sweden. For example, if I want to search for Anchorage, Ted Stevens International, I can say I want to only see airports, since I have the ampersand, that both have Stevens and International in their name. You can search for airports in specific cities. If the country has states, you can write the state. For example, I only want to see airports in Illinois. Or here we have from Australia. Like we looked at, you can search for country. You can search for a region. Or you can search for a sub-region. And as I said, you don't have to memorize these three letters code. If you are in doubt, you can simply open this one. Of course, you should not pick anything. You see here I have the country filter. If I actually pick a region, it will clear this field up here. But what you can do is you can look up the codes in these three. So that's how you use these filters. The flight number filter and the aircraft registration code filter work the same as all other filters. For example, aircraft registered in Denmark start with OY, then they have a dash, and then they have three letters. The question mark is a placeholder for either a letter or a number, or it can be special charts like periods, comma, so on. In this case, I know it's letters, so I can use the at, and this is a placeholder for letters. So if I were to perform this search now, we can just do a copy, and I reset, I paste it back, I choose all my favorites, and I do a search. If I click a file, and I double click it here, you can see it have an registration for OY, a dash, and then 3 letters. Um, in most cases, I don't think any of you need to search for aircraft registration codes. One usage could be if you noted something was wrong in your flight simulator with an AI aircraft and you looked up its registration code. You can use this feature to find out which one it is, and up here you can see which flight plan this aircraft originated from. So if there was a problem with the texture of the aircraft, this was the one you should look for. It goes without saying that, of course, you should have these AI flight plans installed before you could do that. Likewise, if we go back and open the leg search again, you also have a placeholder for the flight number. For example, I don't know if there is any, but let's see if there is a flight plan for one called 1135. It's the case. And let's open this one. We can see it's 1135 is a KLM flight performed in an Embraer, and it's between Amsterdam and Copenhagen. For example, if you want to reproduce a flight that you have flown in real life yourself as a passenger, if you know the flight number and that flight number is part of an AI flight, you will be able to search it like this. But again, I don't think it's a feature that most of you will use, but if you need it, you know it's there. For example, I mentioned these new fields for departure and arrival time. For example, I can choose an airport. This is the care code from Keflavik, Iceland. I entered here and say I want to see all flights that arrive at this airport between 10 in the evening and 4 o'clock in the morning. I perform my search, and as you can see, it was set to local time. So when I double click and I go to the legs page, you can see all of these are inbound flights. So we see all flights that are inbound to Keflavik between 10 o'clock in the evening and 4 o'clock in the morning. Likewise, these are the outbound flight, and what we selected was the destination time. So they will depart at a different time, but they will arrive, in this case, for example, Gardermoen, Oslo, it will arrive 5 minutes to 11 in the evening. And the reason why you might want to use this feature is most of my flights I fly at day. But sometimes I want to shake things up. I want to choose a night flight or an evening flight. Or you can choose a flight, for example, where you want to depart in the night, and as you get near your destination, it will start to get daytime. You can you can perform set up some criteria that would not be reachable. For example, if I want to say I want to depart between 8 and 10 in the morning, and I want to arrive between 8 and 10 in the evening, so it will be flights lasting between 10 or 14 hours. And I over here say I only want to perform a flight that takes possible, so it will not find anything. So as a rule of thumb, I will say if you want to use both, set up both a departure and arrival time, then don't set a flight time. But it will be perfectly okay, as we did before, to, for example, set an arrival time and say I only want flights that last 4 hours, between 0 and 4 hours, or 2 and 4 hours, or whatever you want. A new feature also in this version: whenever you perform a search, it remember the search. I have not clicked anything, so I just close the window. When I open it again, you see it remembers the last search we did. We searched for Keflavik. We searched for those I have marked as my favorites. And we set a start time, an arrival time. However, it saves the last 5 searches you have performed. So if I hit the load button, this is the last search. This one is the one we did before that, and again the one before that, and the one before that. If I change the search criteria and I perform that search, then this number 5 file will be deleted, and number 4 will be renamed into 5, 3 will be renamed into 4, and so on. So you will always have, if you have performed at least 5 searches, you'll always have these 5 files, but you'll never have more than these 5 files. And the reason I made it is because you can have set up a search like this, and perhaps you wanted to look something with the flight. And then after you go into this form and said, oh, I want to see all flights going in and out of Copenhagen, for example. So I reset it, perform my search. I need to check some aircrafts. I go back to my form and I remembered, oh, I want to see that was in my previous search. So again, I go in, load this one, search 2, and you see it goes back to searching for Keflavik. This was the search window, the leg search window, what have changed in here. We have the new filters, we have some extra things we can search for. But these filters I have added other places also. For example, we have this menu item to reprocess the flight plans. Here I have added the flight plan filter. And it's the same 20 values, this most recent use that we saw before. For example, I can say I only want to include those with West. And these buttons also, when you click them, they will only select or deselect those visible. If I say select none and clear the filter, you'll see it will only be the West, those with West in the name that was cleared. If I go in again, if I press and hold shift and I say select none, all will be deselected. Then I hit select all without shift. It will only select these. So when I get back, all are deselected except those with West in the name. So it's the same as before. Likewise, if we go in and let's double click, for example, this airport and go to the gates node tab. Here I've added a filter to search for the gates. Copenhagen is not so bad, but you have airports with lots of gates, and it can be hard to find the one you need to. Third-party airports, in most cases, have a list of operators or airlines using specific gates. For example, if I want to find the gates that those who made the scenery. In this case, it's the new Copenhagen version 2 by Flight Tampa. If I want to see if they have gates they have marked for example, for Ryanair, I can enter the ICAO code of Ryanair and I can see those gates that are appropriate for those. And I, for example, if I want to reproduce a Ryanair flight, I could choose to either depart or arrive at one of these gates. Also, if I know the code of the gate, for example D127, it's a cargo gate with a radius of 36.1 meter. And that's because the default filter for the gates will both search in the code of the gate, and it will search through the airlines. I can specify, for example, if I write, you have this one with C. If I only write C, you'll see I have many gates. For example, I have Alpha 11, but the reason it's included is because we have a C in the airline. So what I can write here is I can write the, there's many ways I can do it. For example, as you can see here, it's a 2-digit number after C. So if I do like this, C and marks, it will only include those that have C and 2 numbers in it. And the airlines are not doing that. Or if I hover the mouse here, you can see I can search for the gate code. And the shortcut for that is GC. So if I write like this, I now only see gates with a C because it will not list, it's not looking in the airline code now. It's only looking in the gate code. I can search for the size of the gates. For example, I can search for the radius. For example, list all gates that have a radius that is 36 meters or more. And I can see I have 2 here that's appropriate for. And I can see I have a lot here that's suitable for cargo or freight aircraft. I can see that from the color code, but I can also search for that. And that's called the type. So I can write type equal cargo, and I see these. Another type, for example, I can see what do I have of heavy gates, and I see all those. Before, when we searched the radius, we set 36 meters, and you can see some of the heavy gates are only 31.1 meters, some are 33.1, and some are 36.1. Like before, we have seen you can write a slash, and I can say medium. And as you saw me type this, here the text is red, but medium can be shortened. You write MED or you write it full, it doesn't matter. Or I can see, I don't know if there is any, but I can see general aviation, GA. We have them down here. I don't think we have any military, but no. If I choose Aalborg instead, and I go in here, I can see them here. The gates are small, so there's only 7 meters radius. I know they are here and down here. They're difficult to see, but if I click one, it will zoom in on that gate. Let's go back to Copenhagen. I have gates I have marked as my favorite up here. Let's do one more. I set it as my favorite, and normally I write which aircraft this one is appropriate for. So, for example, I will say B744F, or however you want to write it. So now I have 2 favorites, so I can just write up here. Favorites equal true. I only see my favorites. And like before, I can combine and say type equal cargo. Then I only see this one over here. I don't see this one up here. Here you can again open the filter manual. The text I enter for the gates is also searchable. It amazes me that people who make very beautiful airports make crappy AFCATs. By that, the naming and the placement of these gates. I have seen not in this scenery, but I have seen examples of a gate that should be available, but when you look at the airport, it might have a static aircraft at that gate, or it might have a static vehicle that will block the gates. If you fly from that gate, that will be possible. For example, I flew one thought where the gate I had selected I thought would be available. There was a static aircraft, and I did all my preparation in the cockpit, and everything was okay. But then I started the push. I had a look outside, and I saw as soon as I started to push, my aircraft was inside an AI aircraft. So one usage for this command field would be to, for example, if it was the case with this one, I could say I want to choose to edit this gate, and you need to have a consistent naming. But for example, I could choose to write blocked for all those gates that I run into that have this issue. So for example, now I can write this short for comments equal, if I can type. Now I only see the blocked gates, but in most cases I want to see those that are not blocked. And again, equal to write not equal. So now I will see all my gates in except this one I said that was blocked. Also, for example, the other one for the G127, I wrote like this, or at least so I thought. It's because I need to write like this. That's the problem. So this is a good example of how you need a consistent naming of the fields, but it is possible to search for the comments. I did not show that when airports using the leg search feature, but as you look here, you can enter a hint text. And when you search for airports in the leg search window, for example, I have marked this one. I have some text up here, but also I write for my third party airports, I write who made them. So I don't want to save these things. So if I go back to the leg search, reset, add my favorites, I can say I want to search in the comments. Oh, sorry, the hint. So I can say, for example, Aerosoft. So these are all the flights that either arrive or depart from my Aerosoft flight plans. For example, if you look here, these are not Aerosoft airports, but they have traffic coming from them either from Europe or from Anchorage, which is an Aerosoft airport. So that's one way you can search. For example, I can also say, if I copy it, now I will only see flights that fly between my Aerosoft airports, and you can see now there's much less routes. And that's because we have no flights from from these selected airport into Anchorage. So that's why if we return to the window we looked at before, this gate filter, as I said, you can mark the gates that are blocked, but another option, for example, if you fly a big passenger aircraft that need to have a dual jetway. For example, if you found out this one had it, you could write here that it's this gate have a dual jetway. I will not save it because I don't know if it have, but you could write it and then you could search for it up here as a comment to only show those gates. Or as mentioned before, you can search for the airline and only see those gates that's appropriate. So that's how you use the new filters added in this version. In this last and third part of the video, we're going to look at some of the other things that have changed in this version. And one of the things is I have opened up the meta and TAF decoder for entry. For example, if I look up Copenhagen, I currently have it set up to Active Sky, so it's an old file because Active Sky is not reading and updating, but it doesn't matter. It will grab the weather from whoever I have set up to be my weather provider, and if I hit the decode button, this is now an entry field. For example, you can see no sig means no significant change expected. I can remove that, hit decode, and you see it disappears from here. Also, this decoder form, it can now be opened from the main menu. And the reason for that is if you don't use the weather providers that's registered in the software. For example, if you get your weather information from other sources, you can now paste it into this field. For example, this one is an arbitrary one I made. You can simply enter it and hit decode, and then you can see what it's amount to. For example, if we have a variable wind direction, for example, from 260 to 320, and decode it, and it will be added. So you can now type in these information. In the previous version, this button down here was called copy to clipboard. Now it will show as a report. And from here you can copy it to clipboard if you need to. But as I've shown before, you now have this topmost window. And the reason for this is you can now, I don't have my flight simulator running. However, you could have your flight simulator running and then drag this window in on top of your flight simulator. For example, if you're flying the Aerosoft Airbus, for example, the 320, and when you have to plan your approach phase, you have to enter information about the wind and the temperature and the pressure. And if you don't want to write them down, as long as you use a flight plan visualizer, you can, for example, if you have a flight arriving to Boston, we can look up Boston, decode the weather, and go in here, and then click this one, and you can drag this window in next to the flight computer in your Airbus, and then you can grab the values from here. You have the either from down here or look them up here if you know how to read these messages. For example, the wind speed, the wind direction you can grab from here. You have the pressure, you have the temperature. So by clicking this topmost, this window, even though your flight simulator have focus and accept your mouse clicks, this window could be displayed on top of your flight simulator. Also regarding the meta, I added two fields to the runway. Here you now have two columns. You now have a column for the headwind and one for the crosswind. And you can manually dial in the wind direction or the wind speed, but these will automatically be updated from this information. Here you see the wind comes from 140 degrees and it will be 3 knots, and that's what these fields are filled with. And based on the heading of each runway, for example, if I choose this one, the heading is 150 degrees and we have a wind from 140, so it's almost right on a headwind, and we have a headwind of 3 knots and we have a crosswind of 0.5 knots coming from the left or the port side if you want. So you can use this if you manually pick the runways to use for takeoff or landing. You can choose this. Perhaps you may, this is based on the meta message, but if you have a TAF where you expect the wind to come from 345 and you expect it to be 30 knots, you can see how it would be. For example, if you choose this one, you'll have it's a negative number, so it's a tailwind of 10 knots. And you will have a crosswind of 7.6 knots. If you choose this runway instead, you'll have a headwind of 12 knots, 12.1, and a crosswind of 4.6 knots from the right or the starboard side. So it's easy to see how the wind will affect your takeoff or your landing. If we go to the gates page, when you hover the mouse over the gates, the tooltip will now show the GPS position of that gate. And likewise, if you choose to edit the gate, it will be shown up here. For example, if you are manually dialing in a GPS position to initialize your INS, you can grab these data from here. I've added a new button to the randomizer form. But before using that, let's do a new search. I reset, pick my favorites. And let's say I want to, instead of picking my favorites, let's say I want to fly in my Q400. I want it to be a flight of a maximum of 2 hours. And let's just do this for now. Search. There are a lot of routes to choose between. Let's say I want to add some further criteria. For example, I can set up, I want both my departure and destination airport to be a favorite. I perform my search again and I accept it. Now there's much less routes. We have some in the States, some in Europe, some in Australia, and some here in Japan. So to pick a random one of these, in the past you could go into the randomizer form and you had this one, pick a random flight. Now you have a new one, pick random route. And they basically do the same thing but still differently. I don't know if it is the case, but let's say there's only 100 flights in America and there's 500 in Europe. We forget about the rest. Then when you pick a random flight, there will be a much bigger chance that it will pick one of the European than one of the American, because it's the number of flights. For example, if I hover the mouse and choose this menu item, this is the number of flights. Even though you only see one route, you have a lot of flights serving that route. So, for example, if you have 20 here and another one you only had one, there would be a 20 times bigger chance it would pick this route over this route. And that's what have changed with this new button added. Instead of it looking at all the flights between the airports serving, for example, the same route, this one will just pick a random one based on the number of routes. So there would not be a bigger chance for choosing the one with 20 flights than the one with one flight. It would be the same chance. And for example, if I wanted to fly my Q400 and I wanted to fly between these airports, I can use this feature. Simply click this one. I see I have a flight internally in Poland. If I want to fly it, I can choose it. I can say to myself, I want to pick another one. Here we have between Düsseldorf and Nuremberg, all Eurowings flight. I don't want this. I pick another one. And let's choose this one, for example, from Lyon, France to Vienna in Austria. I can manually click one, or I can pick a random leg and it will just pick a random one of these. It had already picked a random one. It had picked the last one in this case, but it could have picked any one. But you can manually click this button to pick a random between those that are displayed. And if I want to fly this flight, I can simply double click it. As I have shown in previous version, you can click this button to transfer the data and start your paperwork via SimBrief. If you use other programs, in previous version you had a button down here called copy to clipboard, but now it instead open this result viewer, where you have this button. You can still copy it to clipboard if you want, but as shown before, you now have this topmost. So you can have this window displayed while you have a flight planner or whatever, if you need to fill out some paper in your hand and you need to grab some information from this page, you can do so. So that's why how you can use the new randomizer. Likewise, this unique conversion form, it have also got this button, this checkbox to put it topmost. So if you have paperwork, for example, I fly most of my flights in Europe. So in most cases, my paperwork will tell me the payload and the fuel in kilo. But if I fly a flight in the States, I might have a flight that would expect to have these values, for example, on the FMC entered as pounds. So I could drag this window and have it displayed on top of my flight simulator. And from my paperwork, I could enter my weight in kilo and I could get it output in pounds. And that would be what I would enter into the simulator. So that's the reason it had this checkbox also. These are the things I wanted to show in this video. As usual, if you go into the About box, you can see this history. It shows all the things that have been changed in this version. It tells you what have been fixed, and it tells you some of the things that have happened to the data supplied with this software. For example, it have some better detection of some aircraft types that was either not detected or detected wrongly before. So you can read that in the about box.